and thank you for joining me today. I'm Eliza Albert, a Senior Product Manager here at Claritas, and I'll be walking you through our 2024 Demographic and Cartographic updates, which include additional 2020 census data. And we'll also talk about some of the things that we'll be looking at for future updates. To start out, I wanted to talk a bit about the data quality evaluation our demographers completed on our demographics. So just for some background, we wait for a new decennial census to do our evaluations because it really is our best opportunity to undertake this measurement. Nothing else comes close to measuring the entire U.S. population, so this is the most comprehensive and representative data set we have. And that's because the U.S. government is the only entity with both the resources and the authority to undertake something of this magnitude, and of course they still only do this every 10 years. Even the Census Bureau's own estimates are based on administrative data and subject to error. Plus, other surveys, whether they're conducted by the Census Bureau or another group, only sample a fraction of the population. Now, on to the evaluation itself. We're very pleased to report that the Claritas 2020 population and household estimates achieved impressive levels of accuracy when compared to the 2020 census. Additionally, as we've done these evaluations, we've demonstrated continued improvement each decade. We're also happy to report that our estimates achieved low levels of bias. And with low bias, both accuracy and improvement over previous census counts are typically enhanced, especially when you're aggregating census geographies to custom areas, such as a store trade area, which is, of course, a very common use case. Best of all, we found that in rapid change areas, Claritas estimates delivered the greatest value to our data users, which is important because this would include high growth areas that are critical for new opportunities. Also, for the first time, our demographers did an evaluation of our 5-year projections. The reason we hadn't done that before is because it is harder to predict change 5 years into the future since unexpected events can occur. But even so, our 2020 projections, which were produced all the way back in 2014, still only had slightly more error than the estimates when compared to the 2020 census. So our projection method is also very solid. All right, now let's take a look at the new 2020 census categories that we've added to this release. So we have some more 2020 census categories that come from the Demographic and Housing Characteristics, or DHC file, which was released by the Census Bureau at the end of May 2023. This release is very important because it includes population by age and sex, race and ethnicity by age and sex, households by age of householder, household size, household composition, tenure, and households by race or ethnicity of the householder. So we now have 2020 data for those types of items in our products. Plus, our current year estimates and 5-year projections also now have the benefit of using this data along with our other trusted sources. And we do have spreadsheets with roster changes available for each of our products. So if you haven't received those yet, please reach out to your Claritas representative to request that information for any of the demographic products that you use. Now, I also want to review some of the updates that the Census Bureau has made to their household composition categories. When you look at the updated PopFacts rosters, you'll notice they've moved away from family and non-family designations in some categories. For example, those breakouts are no longer available for households by number of people. So you'll only see total households with 1 person, 2 people, 3 people, and so on, up to 7 or more people. Likewise, you'll notice that households by presence of people under 18 and family households by presence of own children were both replaced with households by type and presence of own children under 18. This new category features similar data to the previous categories, plus some additional details. Now, in addition to married couples living with or without their own children, we also have cohabiting couples living with or without their own children. This addition is especially important because the way these types of households were counted in the past was actually pretty confusing. By census definition, a family household is a household where someone else living there is related to the householder by birth, marriage, or adoption. Therefore, when a cohabiting couple was living with their own children, which are likewise defined as being related to the householder by birth, marriage, or adoption, their household would have been counted as other family with either a male or female householder. However, if they did not have their own children living with them, their household would only be counted as a family if another relative of the householder was present. So, given the large number of cohabiting couples, it's much better to report the data this way. And in addition to married and cohabiting couples, we also have both male and female householders who live without a spouse or a partner, and those are both broken out by whether they live alone, with their own children, without their own children, but with other relatives, or with only non-relatives, such as roommates. Also, a fun fact before we move on, own children are always under the age of 18. Once a child of the householder reaches 18, they're now considered an other relative if they're living in the same household as a parent. Next, we'll take a look at the cartographic updates that occurred this year, and we'll also discuss some of the changes that are planned for next year. So, starting with the census geographies, our transition to 2020-based geographies was completed with the 2023 update. So, there are no changes to the census rosters for 2024. However, some of the boundaries were improved, so you may notice some changes if you're looking at those in Claritas software or other mapping applications. I also want to talk a bit about the move to Connecticut planning regions as county equivalents that's planned for next year's 2025 update. Connecticut has been using these planning regions for several years and petitioned the Census Bureau to officially make this change in 2017. And the Census Bureau is beginning to use the planning regions as county equivalents in their data this year, 2023. Fortunately, the 2020 census boundaries were also designed with this in mind, so the change will not impact the boundaries for block group census tracts or minor civil divisions, which are also known as MCDs or county subdivisions. So those boundaries will all still nest in both the counties or the planning regions. However, we are doing research to determine whether or not the geographic codes for those items will change, because they do include existing county codes at the moment. So we'll keep you updated once we know more about that. And if you're interested in looking at data for the planning regions in the meantime, we do have cross-reference files available that map each block group, census tract, and MCD to its current county and planning region. So those could be used to aggregate data at any of those geographic levels to the planning regions. Additionally, if you're a Claritas 360 user, we have a special file available that will generate custom analysis areas for the planning regions when it's uploaded, so you can easily access them in that software. Please reach out to your Claritas representative if you would like either of those files. Now, let's take a look at our other standard boundaries. So our zip code boundaries have undergone a typical annual update with new boundaries and rosters from our partners at TomTom. Designated market areas have also been updated with 2023 to 2024 television season definitions from Nielsen. And finally, congressional district boundaries have been updated to 118th Congress definitions using the Census Bureau's Tiger files. Now, core-based statistical areas, also known as CBSAs, and combined statistical areas, also known as CSAs, are still using the same definitions as the previous update. And just a quick note here, CBSAs contain both metropolitan and micropolitan statistical areas. So that's why we refer to them collectively as core-based statistical areas. But the metropolitan or micropolitan designation is in each area's name. And then CSAs are groups of CBSAs. These areas are defined by the Office of Management and Budget, or the OMB. And the OMB did release a new bulletin with updated definitions for these areas on July 21st, 2023. Unfortunately, that was too late for us to work into this update, so we are planning to incorporate those changes with the 2025 update. These new definitions also use the Connecticut planning regions instead of counties in the definitions for that state. So it will be ideal for us to make both of those changes together anyway. Next, I wanted to talk about some other methodology updates we made this year. The first improvement we made was to our language spoken at home data, which is available in all of our demographic products with different levels of detail. In this case, we enhanced our method to ensure that the number of people speaking Asian languages did not exceed their respective populations. Now, language origin and ancestry data all comes from the American Community Survey, or the ACS. And there can sometimes be inconsistencies in ACS data, so we don't normally take actions on these types of things. However, in this case, we found areas as large as an entire county where there were a significant number of people estimated to speak Chinese, but no one of related origin. So we thought something like that could very well have been a survey error that got inflated during weighting. And we wanted to put in some guardrails to prevent that type of situation in our estimates going forward. The next improvement was to the foreign-born population data that's found in our Culture Code supplement to POTFACTS and AMDS products. In this case, we enhanced our method to better utilize ACS data to estimate the total foreign-born population for small areas. Finally, the population by race, ethnicity, and educational attainment data that's also available in our Culture Code supplement and AMDS products was enhanced to utilize additional ACS data to estimate the detailed categories you see in those products. Finally, let's take a look at what's next for our demographic data. After all the changes we've seen in these last couple of updates, you're probably wondering if more changes are coming. Well, the 2024 update does technically complete our transition to the 2020 census, so you won't see any more 2020 census categories being added. However, additional changes to the current and 5-year rosters could happen before the 2030 census based on things like changes to the American Community Survey. In fact, this year's change to the breaks under the housing units by year structure built categories in POTFACTS is a good example of the sort of change driven by the ACS. And as always, your Claritas representative will be in touch to let you know about planned changes like that. Now, if you've been keeping up with any census-related news, you may be wondering, well, wait a minute. What about the detailed ancestry and origin data from the Census Bureau that I heard about? This data is indeed part of a product the Census Bureau released on September 21st, 2023, which is known as the Detailed Demographic and Housing Characteristics File A, or the Detailed DHCA. We do plan to review this data to see how we might be able to utilize it in our estimates and projections. However, this data is not available at the block group level due to privacy concerns, so the 2020 data itself won't be published in our products. What's also interesting about this data is that the level of detail reduces as geographies get smaller, and that's also due to privacy concerns. So that topic, along with several others, will be reviewed as part of our annual research and development cycle, where we look at ways to improve our demographic products. And of course, we'll keep you updated about any planned changes that come as a result of that research. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're always happy to help, and we hope our 2024 update is a valuable resource for you.